It's time now to take a look at what's grabbing headlines around the world. Florence Villamino joins us. Flo, top story, Kenya's election, rerun of what happened in August, but marred by some violence, of course.
Indeed, and as you can imagine, it's a top story in Kenya. Let's take a look, first of all, at the Daily Nation, the highest circulation independent paper in Kenya. You can see a photo here of President Uhuru Kenyatta voting there. Of course, he was declared the winner in the initial election in August that was annulled because of irregularities. He says he feels confident that he'll win. Yesterday, according to the Daily Nation, he sent a very clear signal to his arch rival, so that's Raila Odinga, who boycotted the election. He said he's ready to sit down with Odinga to unify the country.
Kenyan papers focusing on the divisions that have come to light in the country.
Indeed. Let's take a look at another paper, The Standard. They're talking about one country, two faces. This fresh presidential election really exposed two sides of Kenya, where on the one hand, peaceful voting went on in some areas while chaos reigned in others. There were reports of attacks on polling stations, blockades, open intimidation. This article, for instance, describes that the environment was so hostile that in some regions that people didn't want to have their fingers marked with ink. That's when it's clear that you have cast your ballot. So they didn't want that because they were afraid of reprisals. There are clearly lessons that need to be learned from these elections, and we need to understand what it means for our country. Our nascent democracy has been shaken to its foundations, says this article, also in The Standard. The hardest task for our leaders now is to bring together the many parts that make up Kenya, and you can see this cartoon here showing Kenya after climbing a great hill. One finds that there are many more hills to climb. That a quote from Nelson Mandela.
A long way to go. Well, let's move on to the situation in Catalonia. Yesterday, Catalan leader Carles Puigdemont ruled out holding a snap regional election to break the deadlock with the central government.
And this has sharpened the political crisis. Must be said that Puigdemont is drawing a lot of criticism, particularly in Spanish papers. You can see here the editorial of El Mundo. Puigdemont is driving Catalonia to a disaster. They really don't mince their words in this editorial. Yesterday, he missed his chance to essentially return to the constitutional path to prevent the application of this Article 155, that allows Madrid to take some control over Catalonia. Instead, he tried to blackmail the state. So that's what El Mundo says. His stubbornness is alarming, and it's going to damage levels, including the social level, economic, and political level. So let's stick with El Mundo. They have this cartoon here showing Puigdemont here. He likes to think of himself as some sort of a Che Guevara there, country or death. But you can see there on the right-hand side, he's not quite sure. Country or death? It seems like he's gambling with the future of Catalonia.
Now, it's an emotional issue, though, in Catalan, and some papers equally critical about the regional president.
Indeed. La Vanguardia, which is a Catalan paper, has been increasingly critical of Puigdemont. They say that he's essentially made this whole referendum into kind of a labyrinth. You can see here they're talking about how the whole country, they're talking about Catalonia here, is adrift. It seems like Puigdemont is keeping Catalonia on a roller coaster, an unpredictable roller coaster. It doesn't seem like anyone is steering, according to La Vanguardia. After endless meetings and back and forth between Catalonia and the central government, Catalonia is still facing uncertainty. And La Vanguardia says this uncertainty isn't good for citizens. It's not good for our economy. It's not good for our politics, and it's certainly not good for our image. So some papers in Catalonia are critical of Puigdemont. Others are actually critical of the central government. Let's take a look at another Catalan paper, Ara, which is blaming Madrid, essentially. Talks about the utter irresponsibility of Spanish leader Mariano Rajoy and his party, the Partido Popular. He has been unable to recognize Puigdemont's gestures. This has really aggravated the problem. It's pushing Catalonia even further away from Spain, according to Ara. We are now entering unknown territory, a dangerous area of repression and resistance.
All right, well, let's end with a lighter story. Two women have been rescued by the U.S. Navy after being lost at sea for 5 months.
5 months lost at sea. This is an incredible story you can read in The Guardian. So these two women were sailing from Hawaii to Tahiti, and in late May, they lost their engine in bad weather, and they thought that they could still reach Tahiti using their sails. Well, earlier this week, a Taiwanese fishing vessel spotted them about 900 miles southeast of Japan, so quite a way off from their planned course. That Taiwanese vessel alerted the U.S. Coast Guard, who came to the rescue and saved them and their dogs. You can see this photo here of a Navy sailor greeting one of the dogs named Zeus. Apparently they survived because they had packed a water purifier and enough food for a year, still 5 months on a ship. Thank God the dogs were there.
5 months, lost at sea, Hawaii, Tahiti, rescued by a god named Zeus. I don't know if that story is something to feel sorry about them, but at least they're safe finally. Florence Filomeno with a roundup of the international papers. More headlines, more news coming up in just a moment.